Welcome to another episode of Whitetail Rendezvous, coming to you 6 days a week as we interview whitetail experts and hear their traditions and personal stories of the hunt. Learn more about the latest gear, discover proven tips, and the latest strategies so you can make your next hunt a success. Now, here's your host, Bruce Hutchin.
This is Whitetail Rendezvous Podcast, episode number 274. Welcome to another episode of Whitetail Rendezvous. This is your host, Bruce Hutchin, and this is a special episode for me to bring you folks because we're heading back to the Baraboo River Valley where I first hunted whitetails some 50 years ago. And we're going to visit with Jim and Garrett Shear. Now, Jim is the son of Harry Shear, who helped get me started hunting out west, and Garrett is his grandson. Jim is the vice president of clinic services at Reedsburg Hospital, and Garrett works for the Department of Natural Resources for the state of Iowa. These guys know whitetail hunting. They are good at it, and the special show is for Garrett because he took a 180 class whitetail with his bow on the farm they've been hunting since Garrett was a little kid. Hey, listener, don't forget to text 33444. Food Plot for your free Food Plot ebook. Welcome to another episode of Whitetail Rendezvous. This is your host, and we're going to a pretty special place for me. In 1966, I started hunting the same farm that these guys you're going to meet today. Garrett Shear works with the Iowa Department of Natural Resources, and his dad, Jim Shear, is the vice president of clinic services at Reedsburg Hospital. Gentlemen, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having us, Hutch. Thanks, Hutch. Good to hear from you.
Hey, so let's start off. About a month ago, when the season opened in Wisconsin, all of a sudden my inbox is full of these pictures of just a Mars Sturbuck. And I guess the neighbors have been calling him Mr. Magnificent, so we'll just stay with that. Garrett, just bring up to speed how that happened, and let's backfill that so people understand they don't have to wait to rut to take a beautiful, mature Boone and Crockett Pope Young class buck.
Yeah, we always think that opening weekend is a good time to get on a deer when they're in their natural patterns. They haven't been pushed by anyone or anything. It's a time where they still feel safe and they're still running on daylight hours, and they haven't moved over to a more nocturnal lifestyle. So opening weekend is always a good time for any time to set up on a big buck. For me, I have a stand that we put in about 2 or 3 years ago. It's actually just below our house on the farm that we hunt. And I was down on that stand, and we have it placed between an island out on the field that kind of pushes the deer within 40 yards of the stand that we have there. So it really makes it for a nice shot. The night before, I shot it on the Sunday of opening weekend. The night before, I saw about 30 deer from the stand. Had about 15 of them come within shooting range. Passed five pretty nice bucks, little baskets. One probably would have scored in the 130s maybe, but they kept looking over their shoulder, and I had this kind of natural instinct that they were kind of spooked by something behind them. But nothing happened Saturday night, and the same kind of thing happened. The deer were all in their patterns. The bucks, the five same bucks came out all at the exact same sequence. The right behind them came this monster, and I had about 5 or 10 seconds with it out in the field before I took the shot. So luckily I didn't have to think about it for too long, but made a good clean shot on it. Ran about 70 yards and found it in a ditch below right above Lester's farm. So it was a good hunt.
So let's do the backfill, because obviously pictures don't lie. And
mm-hmm.
Have you scored it yet? Has it dried out the 60-day period?
No, it hasn't dried out the 60-day period, but we had a preliminary run through with a tape measure. We got to 180-inch gross, which is, there's obviously going to be deductions on it, and I think we had 176 and 5/8 for the net. So those numbers will probably go down a little bit, but we're pretty confident it's going to be a Boone and Crockett buck.
folks, when you listen to the show and go to my website, you will see the buck, and his brow tines are what, 6 inches?
There's a 7-inch brow tines.
Okay, and then he's got one little cheater coming off the left side on his G3.
Yep.
And everything else is very symmetrical. I mean, and it's got mass. So how old a buck do you think it was?
We think it's about 6.5-year-old buck. The nose on it is very, very long. We it's a great buck. The deer weighed about 300 pounds undressed. It was just a real big deer. And we've actually had a neighbor shot it the year before with a bow and and obviously didn't recover it. But then it came out for us, so it was obvious. They thought it was about 5.5 last year, so we're thinking 6.5.
Well, it's just a magnificent buck, and as we've been talking before the show, I ran some numbers at Boone and Crockett, Pope and Young, and it's just astronomical odds that are against you taking a buck like that. What's your thoughts on that?
I feel really lucky, but I also feel that we, our family does a really good job of managing for deer like that, and it was just kind of a matter of time before someone took a big buck off of that property. I've got cousins and uncles and everyone that comes out there, and we make sure that we're taking the right deer out of the herd to facilitate something like that. But again, I feel really lucky. I was, right place, right time. It was really a visible deer. We've seen it underneath some apple trees in our yard, and neighbors all around our area have it on trail cam. So, he could have been in any field that night, but luckily he came in front of me at 32 yards. So
that's amazing. And did he come off the sanctuary to the east of the farm?
He came off of Myers, so it would have been the pasture over kind of towards the west side, towards Trodal's. But we got him to, he came off that edge there, and like I said, we have our stand set up, so he'll be coming within 40 yards of my stand, and got him at 32, and stopped right in one of my shooting lanes, and he had no idea we were there. We have really good cover for the stand, so it worked out really well.
Yeah, and listeners, Myers Place is what, a quarter mile away?
What was that?
The Myers place?
Yeah, it's about a quarter mile.
So, and then was he with other bucks, or with the bachelor group, or was he just out for feed?
He was with other deer. I think he was with that group of 5. But I also think there was another big 8-pointer that was running with him that was actually harvested the other week. Is a 155 to 160 inch deer that was with him. But yeah, so he was he was the big one, but he was running with some other sizable deer.
So having said that, let's pass the phone over to Jim. Folks, we're doing it on a remote. So Jim's going to talk. Jim, let's talk about the hunting tradition and why Garrett was able to close the deal on Mr. Magnificent.
Well, as Garrett mentioned, our whole family has hunted ever since I can remember, and I know my dad well, and he started us off very young, and I have 2 brothers, Gary and Marv, that I know and we've always been a family that hunted. Marv got us into bow hunting several years ago, and my boys, Ryan and Garrett, started hunting with me when Garrett was actually 8 and Ryan was 10. They went on their first deer drive with us, and it was very a great story. And I ended up shooting back in those days a nice 8-pointer, and over by Butler's, which I know that area too. And so that was their first experience. And every fall, I mean, it's a huge tradition for our family to get together, and we start bow hunting in the middle of September, and we really bow hunt or gun hunt just about every weekend through December. So it's a big part of our family, and the highlight for me every fall is when the boys come home and bow hunts, and like this weekend, both my boys are here, and Barb and his boys are here, and we're all bow hunting, so it's a great time.
And let's talk a little bit about your dad, Harry Shear, because I've got fond memories of Harry and how he helped me, get into Weston hunting for sure. And let's talk about what Harry passed on to you, Jim, and then hand the phone over to Garrett so he can answer the same question.
Okay. Well, one of the things that I was reminiscing about this morning with Garrett was my dad was also not only an avid hunter, but he was a hunter safety instructor for many years. And he was our hunter safety instructor for all 5 of his kids. My 2 brothers and both of my sisters all went through hunter safety, and that was very important to him. And I think that again kind of led into why we are. I believe we're good hunters, and I think we're obviously safe hunters and stuff like that. So he really taught us a lot. I remember days where he would take all 5 kids out, and we each would have to carry a squirrel. So he I think we always kind of kidded that's why he had 5 kids, was to carry each one of his squirrels. So so I mean it was just a lot of fun, and I remember squirrel hunting with my sisters back when we were 10, 12 years old and stuff. So he really got us started. And I think like you, he got a lot of people started in hunting, and you mentioned the out west hunting, and Gary and I just got back, matter of fact, on Thursday from a Wyoming hunt, antelope. And that was his last hunt, was last fall, hunting antelope with us. And one of the things that Garrett and I were reminiscing. Garrett was with him when my dad took his final shot, at an antelope, and he got a little bit choked up. But anyway, it was a great experience and something that we won't forget. So
well said, Jim. Yep. Garrett, why don't you pass it?
Okay.
Garrett.
Yeah,
we're going to talk about what Harry, your grandfather, shared with you and how he helped set the stage for your whole family for hunting.
Yeah, I think the stories that I remember, or the memories that I have of hunting with my grandpa to start were again squirrel hunting. We used to go out. My grandpa had 40 acres out by Hillsboro that we used to squirrel hunt quite a bit, and going out with him and teaching us to be quiet and be patient and not we're not fiddling with our gloves and stuff. We're keeping our eyes up at, looking for animals and stuff. But then also, we've been on countless deer drives with him. He's a person that, kind of taught us the lay of the land, to talk, well, we kind of need a standard here because the deer like to run through this area, or, we really shouldn't be pushing this direction, or, so things like that, you learn about the lay of the land, from people that have done it for years, and they have great experience from that. But then, and I would say the most memorable one is probably the, being out in Wyoming with my grandpa and getting that final out with the, at a doe. So, it was a great experience. A lot of our cousins and family were there again. So, it's just one of those things that, you don't really get to pull family together unless, you've got some activity, and the hunting is that activity for us. And it's really been important to us. And I think my grandpa was the one that instilled that in us and has passed it down from the generation to generation.
Yeah. And the thing I remember, Pat and Harry, I mean, your grandmother hunted right alongside of them.
Absolutely. Yeah, she's got pictures of me sitting on the front step of their house with holding 2 squirrels. I actually found that when I was looking for a photo for my dad, and stuff like that. They'd be watching us for a day, my brother and I, and my grandpa would just turn us loose with a 22 and say, be careful, go out there and get some squirrels, and we would go out and squirrel hunt, and we'd learn a lot from my grandpa and learn a lot out there in the woods on how to be quiet and be patient. So it was an important learning learning experience for us, and luckily our grandparents were there to teach us.
And I can't agree more to that. The first time I ever hunted out with your family, first opening day, 1966, your grandmother took the only buck, and there was like 4 of us or 5 of us hunting, and she took the only buck, and we're all looking at ourselves, what's up with us? I'll never forget that. It's a great story. I mean, just to see her just enjoy it as much as the guys, and they had that type of relationship.
Yeah, I'd like to throw in real quick. My cousin Nikki actually just shot at her first deer with a bow last night to her first buck. It was a really nice 15-pointer. So, the tradition gets passed down, on both the male and the female side of our family. So it's not gender based. We all kind of get that, treatment, and we all get the exposure to hunting. So,
say, Garrett, if some people out there in the whitetail revenue world want to get a hold of you, what's the best way to reach you on social media?
You could reach me on Facebook, and my name is just Garrett Shear. And if you want to look me up, I would be happy to reach out to you or to get back to you.
So you're not on Twitter or Instagram?
I am not on Twitter or Instagram, no.
Okay, thanks for that. And
yep.
Let's talk right now. Your father's instilled a lot of lessons learned into you, and we're going to get talking about the strategy. But let's just share a little bit of what your dad has shared with you. So now you're in the conservation business.
Yeah, I think that both of my parents are. We've been working on our properties for a long time, and I think that it comes down to herd management as much as property management. To really get a Boone and Crockett buck like the one that we saw, or the one that we shot this year. It takes a lot of work, and I think that I think my dad instilled that into me. Working on the property and getting everything kind of ready for hunting season. My dad, he'll go out and rake trails for us to get into our stands. We'll do, we got a lot of things that go into our hunting, and I think, a lot of it's the way, I think a lot of the things that he's taught me is the way to act, while hunting, be quiet, be patient. When you're getting into your stand, you aren't, you're hurrying, but you aren't being loud, things like that. You learn that by when I was 12 years old, I used to get walked to the stand because I didn't know where I was going, and so, he'd be like, pick up your feet, don't quit messing with that tree or, anything like that. So it's that's the kind of stuff that he's helped me with. And without that, I don't think that I would have even been in a tree stand or had an opportunity to take really a buck of a lifetime.
So true. And Jim, let's go back to you. So give Jim back the phone.
Yep.
So Jim, when you look at your boys, Ryan and Garrett, and how they're carrying on your hunting tradition, what does that mean to you as a dad?
Well, it really makes me proud, and it gives us a great reason to spend more time together. Like I said, my best times are when they're able to come home and we're generally doing something outdoors, whether it's, preparing food plots or working on tree stands or, just shooting, whether it be the rifles or whether it be the bows, we take time to do all that. And so, I consider them my best friends, and when they're home, it's a highlight for me. It's important, and one of the things that I've, talked a lot about is respect, respect the animals, respect property owners, respect each other. We all have great days like, Garrett had when he shot that buck. And there's other days, they're not so good when, you might, wound an animal and you track it. And as you all know, it's a worse feeling is to, hit an animal and not be able to find it. And, fortunately, our family has not done that a lot, but, anybody who spends any time hunting, is going to happen. And so again, respect is really important, and, respecting nature. And I think, again, you mentioned, Garrett's, current job, with the Iowa DNR, and he taught me so much about, the outdoors as far as native species, and invasive species of shrubs and trees and stuff like that. And so I've learned a lot from him in the last several years with his education and his work. And I remember back when I listened to my dad about how he would teach us about trees and stuff. And now I realize how important all that is and pulling it all together.
Well said. And pass it back to Garrett because I want him to talk about what he's doing at the Iowa DNR.
Okay. I work for the Iowa DNR Rivers program. So our job is mostly working with river restoration and trying to improve water quality and really trying to manage erosion mostly on rivers. But through that we learn a lot about corridors and how to plant and things that you realize how interconnected all the environment is to one another. When a certain when you have these native species, it brings back more native populations of animals, which in turnaround are what deer were used to back before pre-European settlement, where everything has been we've turned things into farmland. So that's what the deer they lived in before that. So working with things like that really makes you understand that there's a lot of connections going on. And so if you can bring it back to a more natural setting, the deer are going to respond to that. And food plots are important. And I think that agriculture around us especially is very important. Deer they feed largely on corn and soybeans around us and alfalfa. So I think it's important, but in those interstitial areas where between those, having native species I think is important, and that's something that I've really taken away from my education, is that we want to keep everything as natural as possible, which is going to be more beneficial towards not only deer but all wildlife, really.
And well said, Garrett. One thing, listeners, the more you become a 365 whitetail hunter, the more you're going to learn about the flora and fauna, the critters and what they eat and the coverage and all the things that impact where you hunt. When you become, I'm going to say, one with your land, you understand the habits, and you will become, as Garrett and Jim have stated, you will become better hunters. Garrett, let's switch it up and go to the management of the herd, because I remember, a long time ago, I'm looking at a picture that's 50 years old, and I'm in the back of an old international pickup truck at the Rogers Farm, and we got 6 bucks there, but they're all basket bucks. But today, year after year, we're seeing more and more larger bucks. Why'd that happen?
Mm-hmm. I think it's because our family has gotten, we've been starting to manage pretty early, I would say, into the idea of managing the herd. I remember when I first started hunting, the idea was to, don't shoot anything that's within or that's outside of the ears. So anything that's inside the ears, you can't shoot. Anything that's outside of the ears, you can, which isn't really a good management practice because you're not allowing the deer to mature. You're probably taking out a lot of 2.5-year-olds that would be really a good deer in a year or two. So I think that the management practice of the herd really has started to go from how wide the antlers are to how old the deer is, which is, I think, an really important step to allow us to get more mature deer around. And I give great credit to my dad and uncles for that. They've done a really, really wonderful job doing that and giving, really the next generation an opportunity to take deer that they would have never seen 20 or 30 years ago. These are the deer that you see, everyone's standing around a few spike bucks and everyone's, pretty happy. And now we pass spike bucks, no problem, and wait for something that's, age appropriate. And also, it's going to have a lot more mass, be a bigger deer. And it's going to be better for the herd. But we also do we shoot a lot of does, mature does as well. We try and take mature does, where we hunt, there's a private lake property, across the way. And so they have a lot of does, and it's also basically a sanctuary for them over there. And so we think it's important to take does as well as bucks, which will be, which helps us increase the amount of how hard the deer rut, because for a few years we were really losing out on the rut because the deer just didn't have to chase because there were so many does around that it was just, there was no reason for it. So, things like that we're starting to learn and adapt to where we are. And I think that's a big improvement. And honestly, it was, that deer was 20 years in the making to take on that property. So it wasn't like we just started doing something last year or 2 years ago. It took a while. So
yeah, and Eddie's deer, I forget how long ago he took that. Was that 10 or 15 years ago? His big buck.
Mm-hmm.
And so,
yeah, I believe so.
Yeah, and so that was the largest buck that I know of that came off that farm, and that was a long time ago. And then steadily, so we knew the genetics were there. It's just a matter of, let them go and let them grow. And you guys have done a fabulous job because, as you said, one of your cousins shot a very nice deer. If it was your cousin, I think I didn't write down the exact person. Let's shift it back to Jim and let's talk about sets. Let's talk about setups, both with trail cameras and with your stands.
Yeah, we generally put the trail cams out early spring, and as Garrett mentioned earlier, try to find those funnels where we're pretty confident deer are moving through, and I think that it's really important to understand the property, the lay of it, and where the pinch points that deer may travel. And then also the food plots, generally, we're hoping that, the deer are using that. So putting trail cams on the food plots, and I like to experiment a lot, with the food plots. I've tried a lot of different things and, anywhere from just your basic corn. But now, I probably about August, I put in a food plot with, like turnips and, and they're just now coming up. And it's a great food source for winter, as they dig down and get to those turnips. So, and then of course, the stands, placing them, where those pinch points are at, and or near the food plots, where the deer are going to congregate once the corn and the soybeans are gone for the fall. So, I think it's really important to know your property, understand where the deer are traveling, where the food is at, and then, kind of strategically put your cameras in those areas where you can get great pictures. And it's fun because, you see all these different bucks on the cameras, but then you also see the turkeys and the coyotes and the raccoons and stuff. So I just enjoy, seeing what's on the property with the use of the trail cams. So
one thing I know, a few years back, I saw a breeding pair of wolves. Are the wolves still in the area, or is it just coyotes now?
We've seen a few coyotes. I know that there's a suspicion that wolves are at least nearby. Nobody's really caught anything on trail cams or anything like that. And I know we mentioned earlier our neighbors also have trail cams and stuff out. So nobody's reported that they got anything or seen wolves, but there certainly is a suspicion. I know one of the neighbors mentioned that while he was trying to get to a stand, that he heard something very close to him that he thought it was a wolf also. Couldn't really see it, but we know in the general area of this of the county and stuff, there's certainly wolves that are kind of moving in because again, northern Wisconsin's been decimated between their weather, hard winters, and wolves and stuff. So they're definitely migrating to the south.
And the reason I bring that up, listeners, is that when you have a surplus of does, as they do above the Baraboo River, predators will come in and then they'll move on. And it comes back to what Garrett had said about keeping a balanced herd. And predators help to a point, and then they keep going. They tip the scale to the wrong way. And these, Garrett Garrett and Jim and all the Shear family have spent 20 years, building herds. So they're getting world-class deer, free ranging, on the farm. And so it's a success story and what we have to do. And I think Eddie mentioned some guys came in last winter and shot a bunch of coyotes, which is important.
Yep. Yeah, matter of fact, when it was funny because after Garrett shot his buck, I had walked up back to the house to get a UTV to help get it out. And as I was coming back, there was a coyote that was laying in the alfalfa probably within 50 yards of where he was. So I fully expected that coyote was going to hit that gut pile as soon as we got out of there. So, and we, matter of fact, we were out this morning and saw a couple coyotes. And so, there are quite a few around. And you're absolutely right. I think that's a part of the management. If you all of a sudden are coming across carcasses of deer, you better be careful of what you're shooting because you can certainly tip it the wrong way, and all of a sudden, we're back to the old days where you're lucky to see a decent deer. So, predators are always on our mind. I'm not a coyote hunter myself, but I know that people take the opportunity to take them out when if they do see them. So,
guys, we've got a couple of minutes left, and what I'd like to talk about is just how you decide how to play the wind. Do you have like a map of all your stands with the wind direction? So when you get up at 4:30 or the night before, when you check the weather and know the wind's going to be X, that you decide. How do you organize that? I guess because you got a lot of places to hunt there.
Yeah, as you know, wind plays a very important part of being scent free. We do go to great lengths to stay scent free, but there's nothing that can ruin a hunt more than the wind. So, we do have stands and we pay attention to the wind. So, some stands, don't get used very often because, it's only good during maybe a northern wind. We have others that are perfect for south or southwest winds, so we use those a little bit more. Like this afternoon, I'm sure we'll probably go out, and we've got a little bit of a southwest wind, and so we'll use those stands that are appropriate for that type of a wind. So. We do have a lot of stands, and that's exactly why, is because some are not appropriate for the type of wind we have.
Now, you also have, the brothers have a 160 that is west of where you guys are. How much time do you spend hunting that, and is that a good quality place to hunt?
Yeah, it absolutely is. We obtained that property several years ago, immediately started to manage it. That has got a lot of ridges, some real large brushy bowls, and then it's also got a stream running through it. So, and we've been putting food plots in for several years, and now we have a German Baptist family that's farming some of the property. So we've got everything we need on that property to contain the deer. I don't get to hunt it as often as I like because, work gets in the way once in a while, but Gary, the brother, has trail cams over there, and we've got pictures of a lot of quality bucks. And there are certain areas on that property that we do not go into under any condition unless we've got one that we're tracking. So I think it's important to give them areas where they're comfortable, that we don't. We encourage people not to walk through it unless they have to, and that is truly a success story of management and just really putting in the work and the knowledge to grow some quality bucks.
So why don't you hand the phone back to Garrett, and he can give some shout outs, and then why don't you do Jim, and then we'll call it a show.
Okay. I guess most of my shout outs are going to go to my family. Big shout out to my dad and brother for helping me grab that deer. When we were tracking it, my brother was the one that kind of was the voice of reason. I was ready to go look for it that night, and he said something that big, you just got to let it let it lay and have its time. And it would, it was a dead deer, moments after I shot it. It didn't go, it went about 70 yards, but my brother was the voice of reason, and then to stay out there and not pressure it. And then, my dad obviously helped me find it. He was the one that first saw it. So, big shout out to them. And then, just to my family in general, cousins and uncles who I, get to spend time with and, have a beer with after the hunt and talk about what we saw and tell our stories, and lots of laughs, and, we get lots of joy coming from them. So it's, that's who I would say most of my shout outs go to.
Jim?
Yeah, I mean, as Gary said, the family is really important. So, we're a hunting group ourselves. I also have some friends at work that I've gotten to know the last few years that are great hunters too. Bob and Barry at work, and then another really good friend of ours, a good friend of the whole family, is Todd Anderson down in Illinois. He's a Wisconsin guy, and we spend a lot of time with him hunting too. So we're just really fortunate that we have some great people to spend time with, and our family, as you mentioned, the Rogers family, they're all avid hunters and stuff too. So we've been fortunate to grow up in a tradition of hunting, and not just hunting, the whole outdoor experience. We have a great area where we live where we can do a lot of things outdoors, whether it's hunting or preparing land or fishing or whatever. So
thanks so much, Garrett and Jim Shear from Wisconsin and along the Baraboo River. And it's just, I've got so many memories, they don't stop, about spending time with you guys and your family and the extended family. And I just want to thank you guys for having me along for the ride. And so on behalf of Whitetail Rendezvous listeners across North America, thank you, gentlemen, for being on the show this morning.
Thanks for having us, Hutch. Thank you, Hutch. Take care.
Hey, folks, you don't want to miss the next episode of Whitetail Rendezvous. We're going to change it up a little bit, and we're going to have Wally Carmichael. Now, Wally is the host of a podcast named Man of Abundance, and I thought it was important to share with everybody because I've got a number of emails about, well, how do you do this podcast? How do you start it? And Wally and I are going to talk about his start in his podcast and what it takes to be an entrepreneur and start a small business. So you're going to find it very interesting, a lot of lessons learned, and a lot of great information.
Thanks for joining us. Be sure to tune in tomorrow for another episode of Whitetail Rendezvous, where you can listen and learn from the experts so you can be more successful on your next hunt. Until next time, listen, learn, and succeed.